Father John's homily for the 27th Sunday, 4th of October 2020. The vineyard of the Lord is the house of Israel. First reading and Psalm spelt it out. It's a traditional image for Israel. So the chief priests and the elders would have been well aware that Jesus was speaking of Israel in his parable, and also that he was getting at them as the tenants of Israel. The verse from Matthew that follows this passage says that the chief priests and elders realised it was aimed at them and wanted to arrest Jesus. Few of us appreciate criticism, especially when it rings true, although it can be just what we need to hear if we can take it on board. What I find really striking, though, about this parable is its portrayal of God as represented by the landowner. He sends his servants, and despite the treatment meted out to them, he keeps sending them. And eventually, despite everything that has happened, he sends his son. They will respect my son, he said. On what grounds can he possibly have thought that? They say that the best guide to future behaviour is past behaviour. It's not always the case, people can and do change, but in a majority of cases it's likely to be the same again. It's generally felt that the servants represent the prophets, many of whom were ill-treated or even killed, and that the son represents Jesus, who was of course also seized and killed. So why on earth did the Father send his son after the way his servants had been treated? Was it not all too predictable what was going to happen? Well, I think God wants to give us every chance to change our ways. Like a loving parent, he keeps hoping that things will change. He loves us, doesn't he, after all? It's where we differ fundamentally from all the other major religions. They cannot conceive of a God who shows weakness, a God who is vulnerable, and yet to love is to be vulnerable. And it was by this very means that God won our salvation, surrendering himself into our hands, giving himself up to death. God is not interested in forced obedience. Like in a lover, he just wants to be loved in return. You can't force love, you can't buy love. You can only love and hope it's returned. And how our God loved unto suffering and death on a cross. How about us loving him in return?